I promise I'm back here, but I want to hang out and play some games on this monitor because it's a Prime monitor. And this video is going to kind of be just a hangout where we check it out, look at the specs and features, and just play some games on it and see how it feels. When you see a Prime monitor for Pixio, you know it has everything. We're talking an IPS display. Actually, it's AHVA, but it's IPS technology. AHVA gives you a little more speed, but we still have the same 178-degree viewing angle and all that. It's a beautiful, colorful monitor. 1 millisecond response time. You got the overdrive in the menu. You can turn on and off. And then 240 hertz at full HD, which is 1080p, but 240 hertz with an IPS technology panel is pretty freaking ridiculous. Now, I've seen some TN panels that have specs like this, but it's very rare to see an AHVA or something like that with specs that are this crazy. And also at this price point, I feel like it's a pretty good price point, and that's one of the things you get with Pixio because they don't put a lot of extra nonsense. In fact, the stand is always a point of contention for me because it's just a stand. You can tilt a little bit, but you can't pivot, you can't swivel, you can't do anything else. It's just a little bit of movement. I mean, it's a nice metal stand. It's sleek. It's got a nice design. Not too over the top with the aesthetic, but it doesn't really do anything else. It doesn't move. You can't slide up and down. So it's just there. But overall, the build quality is really nice. We have an extremely minimal bezel, and in fact, the sides are basically borderless. Let's take a look at the ports on the back and look at those labels. That is sexy. I love being able to see what frequency is supported by each port on the back without having to like crane my head too much because it's printed right there. And you don't see this on a lot of monitors. I wish every monitor would do this, so thanks very much Pixio for the clear and defined labels. You want a little more color? You can turn on the HDR. We've got like a basic implementation of that going on right here. Panel will do 109% of the sRGB. We also have Freesync Premium because this does go above 120 hertz. So the Freesync Premium will cover above 120 hertz. So you can have nice and fluid gameplay. But I'm going to make a recommendation for a lot of you. I would recommend leaving that off because sometimes FreeSync can add a tiny bit of perceived or real input latency with your mouse and keyboard because of the way that it delivers frames to your monitor. Now, since this is a 240 hertz monitor, anything up to 240 hertz is going to look silky smooth. If you're playing your games above 240 hertz, it's going to be so fast that you may not even notice any screen tearing. So I'm going to tell you to leave off the FreeSync or Adaptive Sync if you're using a GeForce card, because it worked totally fine on my NVIDIA 2080 Ti Strix from Asus. So I would recommend just leaving it off and just seeing how it plays, and if you notice any screen tearing, then you can turn it on. But for 99% of the games out there, unless you're playing like Counter-Strike with all of the the settings turned to low, you're probably not going to be going over that 240 FPS mark. We've got our Eye Saver blue light mode. Don't let it mess with your circadian rhythms. We can also turn on an FPS counter, and then you can even toggle a crosshair on. So if you want to cheat or pretend you're not using a crosshair for your friends or anybody you're streaming, they're not going to see it. If you do capture, they're not going to see it because the crosshair is actually linked to the monitor, and you've got a few options there. And lastly, I want to mention that you do have a full-on 100mm Visa mount on the back. If you remove the stand, you can just use that. So I really wanted to see this. It's a little bit difficult to play while also filming because I have to like kind of sit off to the side. So you will notice that almost all of my shots are going to be aiming to the right of every monster because I'm sitting a little bit too far to the left and I'm compensating. So it's a little weird, but you can get a good feel for how everything plays. And having this kind of contrast in this color at 240 hertz is kind of ridiculous in my opinion. Oh, by the way, make sure you go into your options and make sure that 240 hertz is enabled because by default, Windows leaves it at 60 hertz. So don't buy a monitor like this and forget to turn up the frequency. Anyway, back to gaming. So playing a game like Ultra Kill, that game actually gets around 300 or more FPS with my Asus Strix 2080 Ti. That's now made obsolete. But the 3080 we'll be reviewing soon. But anyway, it's ridiculously fast and smooth. It's weird to go from playing on a 60 hertz panel to playing on something like this. You do feel a difference. I actually noticed that I am able to follow the enemies a little better with something like this, and I am able to like line up my shots. The enemies' movements is smoother, so I can like more telegraph exactly what they're doing. It's not as much chop, and also it just feels smoother when you're playing it. So that gives me a little bit of a boost when I'm playing games like like Ultra Kill, and also games like Doom Eternal and stuff like that. But a lot of these games, it's just mayhem all over the screen, but it's still silky smooth all over. Now let's talk about the resolution, because that's the only thing I think I would change with this. It's 1080p and 240 hertz. So if you're someone who is a competitive gamer, this is the one you're probably looking at. This one in the Hayabusa, that's 24 inches, and also very similar specs. It's just not an IPS panel, but you want that speed, right? However, I'm someone who likes 1440p when it comes to 27-inch monitors. 1080p, in my opinion, is totally acceptable at 27 inches. Once you get bigger than 27 inches, you really start to notice the pixels. Like if you're doing a 32 or a 35-inch monitor, I would definitely want 1440p or 4K. But 27 inches and 24 inches, I feel like that's pretty okay for 1080p, and plus 1080p will allow you to play your games faster. It's actually going to look better playing 1080p on a 27-inch native 1080p panel than it is if you were to, play your games at 1080p and stretch them to the full size of the 1440p panel. It won't look quite as good. If it's 4K, then we're talking about doing some like pixel doubling and that sort of thing, and that's a little different. But you do want to play at your native resolution if you can, for the best quality. So overall, the combination of speed with a really high quality AHVA panel that gives you like that IPS quality that a lot of people like when it comes to color, none of that washed out TN nonsense. So if those are the two things that you're looking for the most, then this is probably going to be the monitor for you. Also, I really like the price to performance ratio you get with Pixio, so that's why I use them for my streaming rig, and also I've got a Pixio monitor over on my side rig as well, and they are just really easy to recommend monitors. If you're someone who's not playing competitively and you're okay with like 165 hertz or 144 hertz, well, Pixio has some other monitors that are 1440p at this size, and they also have a 32-inch one that I love. It's a curved 1800R curved monitor. So I would probably recommend going with one of those, just because the extra real estate while you're doing productivity and in Windows can come in handy. But for gaming, 1080p is still really awesome, and I think a lot of people are going to know that. So again, it's all about what your lifestyle is and what you want to do. Again, this is the PX279 Prime, and it is beautiful, and it's fast. Let me know what you all think in the comments. And while you're on the internet, because we're all on the internet, head over to epicpants.com and grab yourself a t-shirt. We got some really awesome new shirts in there, and a mouse and keyboard while you're there to keep up with this monitor. I'll see you in the comments.